Hey everyone. The Formula One team at Balazzo is back for round 10 of the 2021 season, this time at Silverstone. Sorry, this is your host Nitish. Before we start with today's show, I request all our viewers to like, subscribe, and share to this channel and follow our social media handles whose link are provided in the description box below for the latest sports update. Today we have Kanav with us, a die-hard Red Bull fan, Debdatta, a die-hard Mercedes and Sir Lewis Hamilton fan. From US, it's Rachit who is joining us, a die-hard Sebastian Vettel fan. And this time around, we have a special guest with us as well, all the way from Mexico, Christian. So she runs a podcast called Full Throttle, and that is basically all I know about her. So Christian, why don't you introduce our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, my name is Christian. I'm from Mexico and I'm a host for the podcast Full Throttle. It's about motorsport and we do interviews for some drivers there. So, if you want to go check it out.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So before we start, this time the concept of sprint races is introduced for the first time in F1. So we have already had the sprint races in F2, but the concept is a bit different this time around. So to bring everyone on the same page, let me tell about how the Silverstone weekend will work. So we will usually have the practice one session, 60 minutes on Friday morning, followed by the qualifying session, which has replaced the usual practice two session. So the practice two session has been moved from Friday to Saturday morning, followed by the 30-minute sprint race, which and then the final race on Sunday. So those who are already familiar with the F2 sprint race concepts, F1's again going to be a bit different. So here are some key things that you should know about the F1 sprint race. So qualifying on the Friday will set the grid for Saturday sprint race. The drivers will have a choice of the tires, which way they want to start with. There is no mandatory pit stop. There is no mandatory anything. And the sprint race finishes will set the order for Sunday's Grand Prix. So, which brings to my first question. So, in the case of F2, the top 10 grid order is reversed for the sprint race, which I believe is leads to more opportunity for the driver who would usually start at the 10th grid position to win the sprint race. And we have seen how intense the competition is in F2 in between the drivers as they are closely lined up on the points table in the championship. So, do you think the concept of the F1 sprint race is better than the F2 or not? So, let me first direct this question to Rachit.
Perfect. Okay, great start. I would say I won't compare the two because to me it's a complete different concept. First, talking about F2, why do they do it? From what my understanding is, I think F2 is still a training ground for everyone who's eyeing a seat in F1, right? So they want to prove their mettle in F2 so that they can get a seat in F1. So I think this concept works best for them, wherein you reverse the grid from the sprint race so that people can get free air and can get those front rows and try to show their skills to the F1 teams and try to prove their mettle. But when it comes to F1, I think this to get a front row seat, you need to work really hard. You need to work your ass off, and you can't just be handed off a front row because you stood like 10th in your sprint race and you can get a front row. So I think those are two completely different concepts. So yeah, I think that's why I don't see. I think they can both coexist. I don't think that we need the F2 concept in F1, basically.
So Christian, what do you think about the concept being different from F2?
Well, as he said, I think Formula 2 is one thing, and obviously Formula 1 it's another different thing. And yeah, I think Formula 2 it's a very competitive series in which you have to work so hard to, I don't know, call the attention for some of the team drivers of the team principles on Formula 1. And I don't think that will be necessary in Formula 1 because it's another level and we've been racing like this for years now. And I don't think that's necessary at all. So, yeah.
Okay, so Devdatta, my next question is for you. So just like as we talked about the F2 and F1, so let's say the F1 did had a sprint race like F2. I know you are a huge Mercedes fan, Lewis Hamilton fan. So just a case scenario that George Russell qualifies on, let's say, P10, and when you eventually reverse the grid, he's put in the front row of the sprint race. So it's just a hypothetical scenario, but George Russell might end up winning the F1 sprint race or at least finish on the podium. So number one, what do you think of that particular scenario, and how do you rate George Russell's performance so far in this particular season? Do you think he has already booked his seat for in the Mercedes for next year?
So, firstly, it's a very hypothetical situation because even if he starts at P1, we have to also take into account the fact that he has a Williams car, and they have improved this year the car, but that's really hypothetical that he could get on the podium with you know, Ferrari and McLaren also will be just behind him if in case they reverse it. So he'll be up against Ferrari and McLaren. And as for a seat in Mercedes, we know Hamilton has already booked his seat. Only one seat left now. So I guess he might get that seat that right now Valtteri Bottas has, because last year's Bahrain also we saw that although he had a very bad luck, but he was doing well in the Mercedes car, and he's also a preference for Toto Wolff. So yeah, he might have a seat in Mercedes, in my opinion.
I just hate when someone says about Bahrain last year, like the Mercedes
Yeah,
crew just I'm way sorry for them about that.
very unlucky.
Very unlucky. So yeah, what do you think about Kanav about this particulars? Like, what are your views point? How has George's performance been this season so far, and what do you think about his seat?
Well, George Russell has actually improved upon this season. This season, I think, is his best season. Yet he's to score points, but he has been gaining positions on merit, which is the most important thing. And with the Williams car, and got into the Q3 for the first time. He had a great battle with Fernando Alonso in the last race. So I think so. He has shown his talent. He has shown that he's capable to drive that Mercedes car, and we know it was just the faulty pit stop in the Bahrain that costed him the podium for at least. But I think so. His Mercedes seat is now long due, and definitely by next season, I think we'll see George Russell in the Mercedes car.
Sure. So let's move on to the next question then. So in the case of F2, again, I'm comparing the F1 races with the F2 sprint races. But yeah, the winner is awarded 10 points in the case of sprint races, which I would say provides some scoring opportunities in the championship. Whereas in the case of F1, only 3 points is awarded to the winner, and you don't have any points after the third position finish. So, like, do you think that this concept is okay? It's still in the test phase. I know that, but should the FIA look into it and improve it over further, or let's have some more point finishes other than just the top 3 point finishes? So, why, Rachit? Why don't you answer the question?
Sure. I think the people who are going to love this concept is the fans. When you get to see two races happen in one weekend, who would not want that? So, but again, I think this is again, we've been having the kind of qualifying that we've been having on Saturdays for I don't know how many years now, right? So just to go away from that won't be so quick right now, for I would say. But again, I think the people who are going to be in benefit are the fans, who can see scrap happening on Saturday and along with that on Sunday. But talking about the point concept, I think 3 points are probably the right. I would say it's not a lot, but again, it's the right mix which gives them the right motivation to just shoot for the 30 minutes of whatever that amount of time is. So I think if it's any more than that, I would question that, because then you're just giving away points, right? then that just disrupts the whole table and just so yeah, that's what I think. So yeah.
Okay, so Christian, I would give you another scenario just in case. Let's say Max and Lewis did start up on the front row in the sprint race, and both clash into going into the first corner, and both of them had to go to the pit stop, and they end up finishing in out of the top 10. Just a scenario. So, what do you think? Like, how what can you point out of that scenario? How will they look at the main race in that particular case? Both Lewis and Max, let's say, finishing out of the top 10 in the sprint race.
To be honest, I think that's probably something that can happen because both of them are fighting for the championship, and there's a lot of pressure, I think. And I don't know. It will be sad for me because personally I am a huge Max fan, but I think that's something that can happen, and not only to them. I think, like in Baku, at the restart from the yellow flag, that's probably how it's going to be. And yeah, team principals are not going to be happy with it because their best drivers are going to be in pits. But I don't know, it's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen. But I would say that they probably, if they come back, they like to make some places up. But yeah, that's what I think.
Okay.
I think it's gonna make for a fun adventure in the sense that sometimes qualifying can get a bit mundane. How it is set up right now, it can get a bit boring, and you know which are your top cars and how they're gonna perform. You basically can tell at times the top six, except for what happened last weekend when you saw Lando bagging that.
The top.
Yeah, exactly, bagging the top three. Right? So you get one of those, but you can still say, okay, these three car makers are going to be the top three or top six or whatever that is. So this brings in a bit more spice to the whole mix, I feel. Yeah.
Given the situation only, the Lando Norris might start on the front row, or you can say on the grid position on the on the Sunday's race if this particular scenario kind of happens.
Mhm.
So next question is like, let's talk to you about Debdatta this time. So just an FYI, Red Bull brought new parts in around 4 trucks in the Austrian Grand Prix. And Mercedes at the start of the season said that they are not going to bring any upgrades to this 2021 car. Instead, they will directly work on the 2022 car as the rules are supposed to change. But last week, I read that Mercedes is planning to bring upgrades to the 2021 car. Also, we are seeing a frustrated Lewis Hamilton this time around. So, do you think Red Bull has forced Mercedes to bring updates to the new car by showing complete dominance? And do you think the Mercedes might be able to catch up to the dominance showed by the Red Bull and just pull Max down of the championship lead?
What I think is Red Bull getting the new parts is just a bait for Mercedes, because Mercedes has been telling that we won't upgrade the 2021. So this was just a bait that Red Bull has put, and I think James Allison has only said that they have got new parts. So if he is saying it, then obviously there are new parts. But what from where I sit, I think if Mercedes has to pull up their game, it has to be Lewis Hamilton who has to do it, because Toto Wolff has said it. If there are going to be upgrades only in 2022, then that's it. So whatever right now has to be done to get to the podium, it has to be Lewis Hamilton and his experience. So yeah, that's how I see it. So
I
22
think
is going to be a good year.
I think and it was made pretty clear that they're not gonna do any changes to
Yeah,
2021 car. I think they've said,
yeah,
because they know the disadvantage that they have, and nothing can
yeah,
offset what they have right now. So
yeah,
the setup that they have is probably the best that they can achieve currently.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
no major changes would topple Red Bull off of
yeah.
the run that they're having.
So do you think that it might be just a one-off season for the Red Bull, like winning 2021 season and again on the back foot by 2022, because they are too much focusing on the 2021 car instead, let's say, working on the 2022. And they might, and next year we might again see Mercedes dominating the next era of the F1.
But again, you can't
So-
say that they're not focusing on the 2022 car, right? I
Right.
bet they have the same amount of attention to that car, because I think they already have a winning setup right now, so they don't need do a lot more changes to what they have. And with the new regulations that they had in 2021 has been a luck for them in terms of how it all panned out, and just that Mercedes and Aston Martin cars like that, they were in a disadvantage. So I don't think they're not going to be looking at 2020. And from what I've heard, I think Red Bull is still going to be in an advantageous position in 2022 as well.
So Christian, what do you think about this particular situation? The Mercedes.
Well, I guess Mercedes is focusing on the next year, not this one, because we're almost at halfway of the season, and they're gonna keep fighting. But Lewis just signed 2 years with them, and I think they're gonna focus on those 2 years and not this one particularly.
So Kanav, any additional points you want to add? You are a Red Bull fan. You would love to see Max lifting the trophy this
Yes,
time around.
definitely. We are having a great season right now, and one more point is that like Honda will be leaving the Formula One after this season, so like it leaves Red Bull with actually no engine supplier. Though Honda would be there, they are promised to give off their assets to the Red Bull. So like I think so this is the year which when they can fully utilize the Honda's capabilities, and I think so they are making most out of it, because 2022 is still an unpredictable year. And most importantly, we cannot predict as of now, because 2022, with the financial regulations kicking in, now this will be a level playing field with all the teams having the similar budgets. They could use the similar kind of parts. So at this point of time, it's very difficult to predict that whether 2022 will be a Mercedes season or a Ferrari season or a Red Bull season, or you can have any other team like an Alpine being at the top because of the level playing field being provided by these regulations.
So I'm not sure about the Alpine, but I do feel like McLaren are one of the hot teams, hot favorite teams for the looking forward to the next year. I'm a
the
huge
way
fan.
Alonso had his
Yeah.
race last time, I think Alpine is somewhere up there. Don't worry about it. You never know; they might just come out of nowhere and just upset a big.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Lando Norris then. What a great season he is having. But still, I would say Ricardo is struggling a lot this time around in the McLaren. And with the other drivers who has changed seats over the winter, all except Ricardo, I feel are quite comfortable in their new cars. So what do you think are the reasons that still Ricardo is struggling? And the second question, is Norris kind of having a season of his life? Anyone who would like to answer that. So Kanav, why don't you answer it?
Well, as of we can say about Lando Norris, he's still very young. He's still new to the Formula One. I think so. He's just 3 seasons old, so he has lot more to achieve. And with McLaren having full focus on him, he has a long-term contract with them. So I think so he is getting all the privileges from the McLaren side, and which is actually helping him out. But at the same time, Daniel Ricciardo, he is not his first time, I think so, with a Mercedes engine. Prior to that, he has worked in Renault engines over the years, because with the Renault and Red Bull, he has worked with the Renault engines, and I think so. It's just a natural thing. He's taking his time to get set in the car, and I think so. It's just 10 races down the line. We have still 12 more races to go, and post summer break, I feel that he would be working on the simulations, and maybe he will be improving in the coming set of races.
So Christian, what do you think about the Lando Norris versus Ricardo situation?
I think Lando is having the season of his life. I mean, he's scoring points in every race, and about Ricardo, I think he's still getting used to the car, but I don't think that's like a proper excuse by now, because it's the 10th race. And like you said, all of the other drivers that change teams are already kind of like feeling more comfortable in their cars. But I guess there has to be more than the car. I think the psychological part, I don't know, like his thoughts on the fact that his teammate is younger than him and that he's beating him in every race has a lot to do. And I hope he does well on the upcoming races. But yeah, I think it's more like on the psychological part, not about the car.
I think I would agree to her psychological aspect, because if you guys remember the last time he switched from from Red Bull to Renault, he probably had the same phase wherein he was not getting really comfortable with the car, and it was pretty much the same thing that happened to him there as well. So I think if that's to say, I think that probably is the case, and as and when he gets more and more wheel time, I think he gets better, as you guys have seen him with Renault as well. So
the 2020 season with Renault was completely different from Ricardo. What we see Ricardo in 2019 Renault season.
Exactly.
So yeah, so and let's move on to the Ferrari. Then let's talk about little bit about Ferrari as well. So we have seen like Leclerc has scored good points in the like finishing in the top 3 in both 2019 and one of the races of 2020 at Silverstone. And considering that he's also getting a tough competition from his teammate Carlos Sainz, how do you think about the rivalry might end up looking like in the case of Carlos Sainz versus Leclerc, and who might finish up on top? So, Kanav.
It's difficult to tell actually. Both of them are very good drivers, and if you go by the stats, I think so they are equally matched at this point of time in terms of out qualifying each other. And since Ferrari, I don't feel they are the top contenders for the podium right now in Silverstone. But definitely, I would see them in the top 10, both the cars in top 10 scoring points. And I think so even the sprint race format may be beneficial to them. They might not be doing good laps in the qualifying, but they can do some good overtakes during the sprint race. So you never know.
Debdatta, what do you think about the Sainz versus Leclerc situation?
I think both of them are at par. So no, I mean, I can't say that one is better than the other, like in McLaren, but both of them are at par. And as per the sprint race, I'm not sure if they will be fighting for the first 3 positions, because if they are not fighting for it and just going with the sprint race as it is, they will be at a benefit, because from wherever they start the grid in the actual race, they'll be able to get the points, because we know Red Bull and Mercedes are going to fight for the top 3 in the sprint race, and we don't know what is going to happen. So if Ferrari are not fighting for that, and just doing overtakes and going slow, then they might get good points in the race. And yeah.
Yes, we might see Lando Norris finishing up in the top 3 in the
Yeah.
sprint races.
Yeah.
Very, very much likely able to happen. So now let's say predictions time for the race. So let's start with Christian. So what do you think? How do you think how the Silverstone race is going to be up like, and what are the top 3 predictions you would look at for finishing on the podium?
Well, since it's the British Grand Prix, I think Lewis Hamilton is obviously going to fight for pole position. But I guess, okay, my top 3 will be Max, Lewis, and probably Lando, because also British. And it's like home Grand Prix. He's faster than Checo. He really puts a fight on him. So I think those are going to be the first 3 places.
Debdatta, what do you tell about us, your predictions for this race, and how do you look up to this race? What are your expectations out of this race?
So my expectation would be Lewis on top, obviously, but of course Max is also there. So maybe Lewis or Max, anyone on top. Lando Norris P2, and third, I don't know, maybe someone from Mercedes only.
Great. We are a very great Mercedes fan.
Yeah.
And Rachit, what do you think about how your predictions look like for this race?
I think P1 to me, I think Max is just in sublime form. So it's really hard to take away from the kind of form he is in. So I think Max for me is number one. P2 would be Hamilton. And P3, I would still put Checo in there. I know Lando has had a good race, but again, that Red Bull car when it's on song and when the strategies work just right, I think it's the car to beat, right? So to me, it's gonna be Checo on number 3. Yeah.
So, which brings us to the last. Kanav, what do you think? What are your predictions and how do you look up to the race?
Well, for me, I think so. The P1 should go to Max Verstappen, P2 Lewis Hamilton, and P3 Valtteri Bottas.
Okay, great. So I will also tell about my predictions, what I feel like. So for me, it might be P1 for the Max, P2 Lewis, and I would say on P3, I might look like I might put Bottas at P3 for this particular late race. So, okay, guys, hopefully we are going to see hell of a weekend in the British Grand Prix with the new format of the sprint races and the phase in which the season is right now, with Verstappen leading the championship and Lewis Hamilton chasing it. It's going to be pretty interesting. So thank you all for joining the podcast. Hope we can do another episode in the future. See you all, and do check out the full full throttle podcast link in the description. Do like and subscribe the channel as well. So thanks a lot, guys.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Guys.